Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where students throughout the world have been studying the teachings of the Buddha in the actual words of the Buddha. His original source teachings are captured in what we call the Pali Canon or Pali text. This is a 45-volume collection of books that is written in the Pali language, but there's been a translation of these into other languages like English. And the English translations that we have access to can help you to learn what the Buddha actually taught during his lifetime in his own words. And these teachings, while they're starting to become wider and wider accessible, more widely accessible in the world, they're largely inaccessible to most people because they just don't know where to look for the Buddhist teachings. One of the things that we kind of have right now is we just have a bunch of memes that are kind of floating around Facebook or the internet, which people are saying these are the teachings of the Buddha. But what you'll find is about 99% of those actually aren't the Buddhist teachings at all. So when you dive into the actual teachings of the Buddha from the Pali Canon translated into a native language that you understand, like English, then you can get in touch with what the Buddha actually taught, and you can start practicing his teachings to understand the real wisdom that's in his teachings. Because his teachings aren't to be believed, but instead they are training guidelines in which to train the mind to actively move the mind from this unenlightened state to this enlightened state, where the enlightened mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's eradicated all discontentedness. There's no longer any sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, stress, anxiety. None of these feelings exist in an enlightened mind. So by going back to his source teachings and really getting in touch with what he actually taught, you can then learn that with the guidance of a teacher, reflect on that, and then practice it in your daily life to gradually improve the condition of the mind as you start practicing his teachings more closely in daily life. So this program on Saturday that we have is for students to actively learn with the guidance of a teacher, but more so studying the teachings on their own through the various books that we have. We have a whole series of books, volumes 2 through 13, where you can gain the insight of the Buddhist teachings. We used to use these books, Buddha Vajana, which are a way of basically saying the words of the Buddha. And there's 13 volumes of these. But what I've done is I've transitioned these books with updated translations into books that people can more readily understand around the world. And I've made these accessible to you completely free by downloading. You can go to the website buddhadailywisdom.com/free Buddha books. And when you do, you'll see 13 volumes of books. You should start with the first one, but this particular program is volumes 2 through 13. And the book that we're studying now, where we used to call the Dhamma primer in the Buddha Vajana series, is now called Foundations in the Teachings, and it's volume 3. So if you would like to participate in this program, you can start with that and you can continue through, because today we're studying chapters 57 through chapter 90. And the students have already studied this throughout the world who are accessing these teachings. And then this class is the opportunity for those students to now ask questions to get guidance on those teachings. And then next week, we will be in chapters 91 through 124. So chapters 91 through 124, while that sounds like a lot, it would only take you probably about an hour to really read that, because they're very short chapters, some of them only a half a page long. And you can learn the teachings of the Buddha on your own and then come to this class in order to get help and guidance from a teacher. And we're about another few months away from concluding this run of our program, and then starting in August, we're going to reinitiate this program in a slightly different way, which I'll give you guys guidance on as we get closer to that, probably in the middle of July. The way that we start these classes is we start with a meditation session where we prepare the mind for learning the Buddhist teachings through meditating, coming together as a group, as a community to support and encourage each other in our practice and really prepare the mind for studying the Buddhist teachings, clearing out any clutter that may exist in the mind. So we start with that, and then after the meditation, we move into opening things up for students to ask any questions. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to join us for the meditation. You're even welcome to stick around for the learning after the meditation, because as the students are asking questions, I'll be displaying those chapters on the screen so you'll be able to actually see the teachings of the Buddha in writing in English on the screen as we're actually discussing them. And as I mentioned, you can also download this book by going to buddhadailywisdom.com/free Buddha books. And then from there, you'll see volume 3 you can download. So let's go ahead and start with our meditation just to kind of prepare the mind and get us ready for studying the Buddhist teachings. Go ahead and pull up your meditation cushion or lying on the floor, or however you prefer to meditate. Most people, when they're meditating in a class, will tend to meditate in the seated position, but there's also the standing or lying position that you can do breathing mindfulness meditation in. From there, just make the lower body comfortable and get the upper body nice and erect. The nice erect upper body keeps the mind active, attentive, and engaged, so you can actively train it during meditation. Next, place your hands and arms in a comfortable position. Close the eyes and just breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Nice, natural breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Focus the mind on the breath. The breath is the present moment. I'm going to do some chants just to kind of ease us into meditation, and then be back with a little bit more guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Hotang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho จาจารนังสัมโมโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามานุสนังภูโตภะคะวาติ Okay, you should be breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Experiencing the full inhale and the exhale. Your inhale doesn't need to match up to the teaching or the guidance that I'm providing. Just breathe in and out. You should notice that you can take a nice gradual inhale through the nose, fully experiencing the breath. Then a bit of a pause as you transition into the exhale and slowly exhale out of the body. Then there's a bit of a pause as you transition to the inhale. Breathing in transitioning and exhale. The mind should be focused on the breath. The breath is the present moment. Anytime the mind wanders, cut that off, let it go. Bring the mind back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now. Just let you go internally, focusing the mind on the breath. A nice full inhale. The stillness of that transition. And the exhale. Focus on the breath, in the present moment. เตมิสวากขาโตมหะควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมโมโนสักขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, we're going to study the book, The Words of the Buddha, Foundations in the Teachings, chapters 57 through chapters 90. And we have two moderators, Manal and Basam, who will be able to see any questions that you ask by posting those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. You can put your questions in there, or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like directly or any follow-up questions. So I'll just turn this over to all of you guys to ask any questions that you like, and we'll just study together, and I'll help you to understand what it is that you learned throughout the week with the Buddhist teachings. So I'll turn it over to you, Manal and Basam.
We don't have any questions on YouTube thus far. We might ask Basam if there's anything else on social media.
Okay, I have some questions. The first one is from chapter 67.
Okay, chapter 67.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, the second point number 2. Here the Buddha is relating between concentration and some other progression or benefits. Number 2 is not clear for me.
Okay, so here the Buddha is talking about the 4 developments of concentration. Concentration is that 8th step of the Eightfold Path. And in that step, right concentration, it's all about using meditation in order to develop focus, concentration, or clarity of mind. And we practice meditation as a way to develop this concentration. So here the Buddha is talking about 4 aspects of development of concentration. So let's just read through the first part here I think if I remember, this is a pretty long one because it goes through, it's not too long. It's about 2 pages. So let's just kind of break it down piece by piece. So here we go. Monks, there are these 4 developments of concentration. What for? There is a development of concentration that leads to residing peacefully in this very life. There is a development of concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision. There is a development of concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. There is a development of concentration that leads to the destruction of the taints. Now let's go through each of these individually, and I'm going to read the whole text here of what the Buddha is sharing, and then I'll share with you my perspective on that. The first one that he's referring to here is, and what, monks, is the development of concentration that leads to residing peacefully in this very life? Here, a monk distant from sensual sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy, and with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy, and with the fading away of excitement, remaining imperturbable. This means unable to be upset or excited, calm and serene. Mindful, clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say, peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness. He enters the third jhana. And having given up pleasure and pain, and with the fading away of the former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is called the development of concentration that leads to residing peacefully in this very life. So here, this first one, he's referring to the step of the Eightfold Path of right concentration, that as you develop your meditation practice and you put together all the steps of the Eightfold Path in daily life, which includes right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, as you put together more and more of this practice, then you're going to start experiencing these jhanas. These are preliminary phases that the mind goes through before it enters into the first stage of enlightenment. Some people think that the jhana is just during meditation, but in fact, it's actually something, it's a preliminary phase that the mind goes through and experiences not only in meditation, but outside of meditation as well. And that's through putting together all the various aspects of the Eightfold Path in a unenlightened mind who is off the path and not actually practicing this path is experiencing grave discontentedness typically. An unenlightened mind who's on the path is starting to diminish their discontentedness more and more and more. But then an unenlightened mind who's experiencing these jhanas, the first, second, third, and fourth jhana, it's almost like night and day, where the mind starts experiencing a lot of benefits. And this is where you know that the practitioner for yourself, you're putting together this practice really, really well, because you're starting to experience these jhanas. You're starting to experience the benefits of these jhanas. And I've gone through in classes in the group learning program, and I've explained each one of these jhanas in detail. So I'm not going to do that today. But this is what he's explaining, is these 4 jhanas. If you have questions about any of these 4 jhanas in this class, I can definitely talk about it and help you. But these are essentially the results of putting together the entire Eightfold Path, including meditation. You'll experience the preliminary phases that the mind goes through as it starts to get closer and closer to that first stage of enlightenment. In this concentration that you develop, the Buddha is saying, okay, this is going to help you reside peacefully in this very life, because you've diminished your discontentedness significantly and you're experiencing the benefits of these 4 jhanas. Then he talks about this second aspect of development of concentration. And what is the development of concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision? Remember, wisdom is what antidotes ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. That's what's going to help unravel the whole unenlightened mind and move it closer to the enlightened mental state. So here he says, here a monk attends to the perception of light. He focuses on the perception of day. Thus, as by day, so at night. As at night, so by day. Thus, with a mind that is open and uncovered, he develops a mind permeating or filled with brightness. This is the development of concentration that leads to obtaining wisdom and vision. So when he talks about vision, when you hear him or you see teachings where he's talking about vision, he's talking about being able to see clearly. So remember that wisdom is the antidote to ignorance. Well, ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, or delusion, or confusion, is that poison or that aspect of the mind where a practitioner can't see clearly. They can't see clearly that they're causing their own discontentedness. They can't see clearly that the 5 precepts, if they're not practicing those, it's going to produce unwholesome results. They can't see clearly the teachings of the Eightfold Path that are going to produce wholesome results if they practice the Eightfold Path. So by developing this concentration that leads to wisdom, not only do you have this wisdom, but now you can see clearly, or you have this vision. And as you're able to see more clearly what's going on in the world around you, then the mind is filled with this brightness, because you no longer discontent, you're no longer experiencing the harshness of what's going on around you, you're no longer experiencing so much unwholesomeness coming back to you. You are starting to walk closer and closer to the light, and you can see more clearly with this brightness, because the mind is filled with wisdom and being able to see clearly, this vision. Okay, so that's what the second one's all about, is by not just believing the teachings, but by learning them, by reflecting on them and practicing them, you see the truth for yourself in the teachings, that they are in fact the truth, leading you to making more and more wholesome decisions, so that you can now produce more and more wholesome results in the world. You have better vision. You can see more clearly this natural law of Dhamma, of cause and effect. Okay, so that's what this second one's about. The third one, and what is the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness in clear comprehension? Here, a monk knows feelings as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows perceptions as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows thoughts as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. This is the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness in clear comprehension. So here he's talking about a couple of the 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are what makes a human being a human being. We have form, which is the physical form. We have feelings. We have perceptions, how we perceive things in the world. We have volitional formations, or choices and decisions that we make. And then we have a consciousness, or the mind. And here the Buddha is saying that in order to develop this concentration, which leads to awareness of mind or mindfulness, in clear comprehension, being able to understand things clearly, then you need to develop the ability to observe feelings as they arise, as they remain present, and then as they disappear. The same thing with perceptions, that we oftentimes in the unenlightened state have certain perceptions. I might say to Basam, oh Basam, thank you for donating money to that charity. I appreciate you treating people in the world with such kindness. And if Basam views me as a wholesome person, he might be like, oh, thank you, David. No worries. Where if somebody else has a certain perception they might think that I'm being sarcastic. They might think that I'm looking down on them. Maybe I'm saying that they don't treat people with kindness. So when I say, thank you, John, for making that donation to that charity, and I appreciate you treating people in the world with kindness, John might think that I'm somehow saying something backhanded, as if he's not normally kind to people. But this is John inserting into the words that I'm using his own perceptions. His own perception is that David's being sarcastic here, when in reality, if he just looked at the words that were said, which is thank you for your kindness, the person is just thanking you for their kindness. Rather than injecting your own perception into what people say, you should just read what people say, or you should hear what people say and just view it as what they say without injecting any of your own perceptions into it. So here, if you have certain perceptions that arise, remain present, and then disappear, you need to be able to be aware of those, because one of the things that you need to do in order to attain enlightenment is to not cling to your perceptions, is to let go of your perceptions. Because if you continue to perceive the world through your own mind and through your own misperceptions, then you're going to be misunderstanding a lot of the things that are happening in the world. You have to just view things as they are. If somebody says, thank you for your kindness, then just know that they're saying thank you for your kindness, irregardless of the tone, irregardless of the circumstances, irregardless of the individual that's actually speaking in your past relationship with that person. When they say thank you for your kindness, just view it as thank you for your kindness. You have to not cling or hold on to your perceptions, because if you do, then you're not going to be able to see things clearly as they truly are. That means ignorance or unknowing of true reality is still in the mind, and you're going to be making decisions based on your perceptions, which oftentimes are misperceptions. So just view things as they truly are. So if you're able to see your perceptions arise, that they're present and that they disappear, then you have better awareness of mind, and you can then choose to no longer cling to these perceptions. And by not clinging to these perceptions, it's going to then create better concentration in the mind and develop clear comprehension, where you can see things clearly as they truly are. And then the same thing with thoughts. If you have certain thoughts that arise, that having awareness, that mindfulness, that they are your thoughts and don't necessarily come from anywhere other than your own mind, and being able to be aware of them, see them as they exist, and see them as they disappear, you can then take active steps to eradicate any unwholesome thoughts that arise. But without being able to observe them with mindfulness, you would never be able to get to clear comprehension or this development of concentration, because unwholesome thoughts are going to be polluting the mind. So if you're aware of the feelings, perceptions, and thoughts as they arise, then you're able to cut off any unwholesomeness and arise the wholesome. And this will help you to develop concentration, as well as having mindfulness and clear comprehension. And then just to round this out, Basam, even though you didn't ask all these questions, is this fourth one: in what is the development of concentration that leads to the destruction of the taints? Here, a monk resides reflecting on the arising and vanishing in the 5 aggregates subject to clinging, such as form, such its origin, such its passing away, such as feeling, such its origin, such its passing away, such is perception, such its origin, such its passing away. Such are volitional activities or volitional formations. Those are your choices or your decisions. Such is the origin, such is passing away. Such is consciousness. Consciousness is the mind. such its origin, such its passing away. This is the development of concentration that leads to the destruction of the taints. The taints are the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters are the pollution of the mind. This is what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. As long as the mind has the 10 fetters, it will continue to be unconcentrated. It will continue to be unenlightened. It will continue to have random, unwholesome thoughts and rapid thoughts and overthinking things. So what the Buddha is saying here is that development of concentration, which is practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and developing singleness of mind in meditation as well as outside of meditation, what it's doing is it's helping you to see the impermanent nature of the 5 aggregates so that you no longer cling to existence, that this form, this physical form isn't yours, it doesn't belong to you, it isn't who you are. This physical body isn't who you are. These feelings that you experience in the mind, that's not you, that's not who you are. These are impermanent feelings that arise and then they pass away. They cease to exist. They're impermanent. Same thing as perceptions that we talked about. Same thing with volitional formations or choices and decisions. These volitional formations, these are choices that we make. If we stay clinging to them and holding on to them, then we're not able to make new choices that could potentially be better. Or if we make a certain choice and then somebody else is involved and they would like to make another choice, if we hold on to our choices and decisions, then the mind's going to be discontent because you want it your way and you don't have the freedom to just let go and allow there to be another decision made. So when we hold on or cling to our choices and decisions, it causes discontentedness in the mind. And when you realize that you are not these choices and decisions, that's not who you are, and you're comfortable with letting go and allowing other decisions to be made, it doesn't have to always be your way, then the mind can reside more peacefully because you're not holding on to your decisions and you've got to have it your way all the time. So understanding that these decisions are impermanent, because that's what he's talking about when he's saying that the origin and the passing away, this is impermanence, right? And then such as consciousness or the mind, right? Realizing and understanding that this mind is not yours. As long as you hold on to this physical form, to these feelings, to the perceptions, to the volitional activities or volitional formations, these choices and decisions, as long as you hold on to this mind thinking that it's yours, then the mind is not going to experience this concentration, and it's not going to be able to let go of the pollution or the taints or the fetters that are in the mind. That's what needs to be let go of in order to attain enlightenment. So here he's breaking it down piece by piece, how to develop this concentration and what it leads to and the benefits of having done so. So questions on that?
Thanks a lot. Now it's very clear.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. From chapter 79.
Okay.
Yes. The last paragraph is also not clear for me.
The last paragraph. Okay. Let me see what this one's about. All right. One who has developed and cultivated mindfulness of the body. Okay. So when you see that right away, what I understand this chapter is going to be about is it's going to be about the right mindfulness, which is the 7th step of the Eightfold Path. Right mindfulness has 4 foundations of mindfulness. There's understanding the body as the body, which is bodily sensations. There's understanding feelings as feelings, or the feelings that arise in the mind. There's understanding the mind as the mind, which is the condition of the mind. And then there's the mental objects as mental objects, which are kind of longer term objects that are in the mind, like ill will, or complacency. These are mental objects, and they're harder to eradicate. The way that we experience things in the mind is they first are bodily sensations, that we can experience the bodily sensation of excitement as it arises. You can develop mindfulness where you can feel it as a bodily sensation before it ever enters the mind. Or you can experience the sensations of anger in the body, this hot heat or this sharpness rising in the body. You can develop awareness in the body of these bodily sensations. If you catch it there, you can cut it off there, which is like cutting it off at the stump or the root. And that's what you need to ultimately get to, is where you've developed such awareness of mind or mindfulness that you can sense and be aware of these bodily sensations as any painful feelings are starting to arise, or any pleasant feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, that you can notice it as just a bodily sensation. And if you can cut it off there, that's wonderful, because it never enters the mind. That's like seeing somebody come towards your bucket of water with poison, and you slap a lid on the bucket of water and they can't put poison in your bucket of water. If you cut it off there, that's outstanding, and you have to develop your awareness of mind to observe those bodily sensations. If you don't catch it there, then it's going to come into the feelings of the mind. You're going to start experiencing feelings of frustration or irritation, for example, or laziness, right? Or dullness of mind. And now that it's feelings in the mind, we can also cut it off there. And if we've trained the mind well enough in breathing mindfulness meditation, training the mind to let go and focus on the breath, then you can cut it off maybe there, which would be the next best thing than cutting it off at the bodily sensations. So you can cut it off as feelings, right? But if you don't catch it there and you allow the feelings to continue to fester in the mind, now it's going to affect the condition of the mind, which is the third one. It's going to start affecting the condition of the mind. And now you're going to be dealing with this for several hours, or maybe several days, or maybe even a week or two, that the mind's going to be angered or frustrated or feeling lazy, right? Well, we can also cut it off there if we start noticing it, that it's kind of starting to permeate the mind and starting to stick around longer. We need to train the mind to cut it off there. But if we don't cut it off there, then it forms what's called a mental object, which is the fourth one, like ill will or complacency, something more firmly rooted in the mind that's more long term, where someone has ill will or complacency for 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years, right? There, it's a lot harder to root out. You can still root it out, you can still get rid of it, but it's a lot harder. So that's why, as you develop this awareness, getting all the way back to where you have awareness of bodily sensations, then you're cutting it off before it ever becomes a problem of being feelings affecting the condition of the mind or a mental object. And you can get better and better at doing this. Eventually, when you start cutting off painful feelings, pleasant feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant at the bodily sensations, or you cut it off at the stump. The Buddha used the words obliterated at the stump. When you start doing that more and more, eventually those painful feelings, pleasant feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, discontentedness never arises anymore. Because as soon as its head kind of rears up and you start experiencing the bodily sensations, the mind has been so well trained over multiple months and years with breathing mindfulness meditation that you can cut it off at the bodily sensations. As soon as the painful feeling, pleasant feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant arises, you cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. And over the course of time, you start realizing the craving, desires, attachments that are creating that, and then you eradicate the craving, desire, attachments, and this discontentedness never arises anymore. So right away, when you see the Buddha talking about mindfulness of the body, what he's talking about is becoming aware of these bodily sensations. Because if you never get a chance to work all the way to the point where you're becoming aware of the bodily sensations, you're never going to get to enlightenment, because the feelings, the unwholesome feelings, are arising in the mind and they're polluting the mind. You're not catching them soon. So if you're allowing it to come into the feelings, into the affect the condition of the mind or create mental objects, that's what you've been doing your whole life, and probably what you're doing in some cases now. But better and better, through learning what the Buddhist teachings about mindfulness of the body, you become more and more aware of these bodily sensations, cut it off sooner and sooner, and this is how you liberate the mind from the discontentedness, from these discontent feelings, because you're cutting it off before it ever gets to the mind. It's like putting a lid on the bucket and not allowing the poison to actually get into the bucket of water. So now you have fresh water to drink all the time. Or the other way to say it is, now you have a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, because painful feelings, pleasant feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings are never getting into the mind. You're cutting them off and cutting them off and cutting them off at the bodily sensations, and then eventually they don't even arise as bodily sensations anymore. But let's see what he's saying here, okay, with this whole teaching. Again, monks, when walking, a monk understands, I am walking. When standing, he understands, I am standing. When sitting, he understands, I am sitting. When lying down, he understands, I am lying down. Or he understands accordingly, however his body is positioned. So this is that singleness of mind that we talk about with right concentration, that developing the awareness of the mind to the point where you know every moment what's going on with the body. That's what he's talking about here. Full awareness of the body. Again, monks, a monk is one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing or extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, one who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food, and tasting, one who acts in full awareness when defecating or urinating, one who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. This, once again, is singleness of mind. Oftentimes what happens is people are eating and they're watching TV, or they're eating and they're trying to text people. This is splitting the mind in two different places. And if you train the mind to have singleness of mind, where you're focused on just one thing at a time, you'll have full awareness of the mind. Okay, and this is how you do it, by making sure that not only when you're eating, drinking, consuming food, and tasting, that you have full awareness, but also defecating and urinating as well. Some people, when they are on the toilet, they're on the phone. This is splitting the mind and trying to do multiple things at one time. And what it does is it just creates an overactive mind, rather than creating singleness of mind where it's concentrated. And in order to have awareness of the bodily sensations, you're going to have singleness of mind. Because if you're eating and you're watching TV and some feeling arises, you don't know where's that feeling coming from. If some bodily sensation is arising, where is it coming from? Is it coming from the food or what you're watching in TV? You don't know, because you're trying to do two things at one time. So when you bring your mind to singleness of mind and you're only doing one thing at a time, you will know exactly where these bodily sensations are coming from, where these feelings are coming from, and so forth and so on. But if you don't develop that, you won't understand it. As he resides thus diligent, dedicated, and determined, his memories and thoughts based on the household life are abandoned. With their abandoning, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. That too is how a monk develops mindfulness of the body. So here, his monks are people who've left their home life for homelessness as a roaming aesthetic. So he's encouraging them to let go of any memories from their past. So that's the way you can think of it, because you're in the household life, is just anything that you've done in the past, let it go. If you've done unwholesome things or you've done wholesome things, just let it go. No reason to hold on to those memories and those thoughts, although you'll know that you did those things, but there's no reason to allow it to invade the mind. So stay diligent, dedicated, and determined to let those things go whenever they arise. And then through letting go of the past, the mind can reside more in the present moment, where his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. By having this singleness and concentration, that's what he's saying, that too is how a monk develops mindfulness of the body, these bodily sensations. Because you know that if you have singleness of mind, if your mind is focused on eating, but you're thinking about the past, you won't know, where are these bodily sensations? Where are these feelings coming from that I'm having that is polluting the mind? Is it from what I'm doing right now? Or is it from these thoughts and feelings and memories from the past? Well, if you hold on to the memories of the past, you aren't going to know where these things are coming from. So you've got to let go of the past and develop this singleness, having this steadiness of mind and concentrated, so that as the bodily sensations are arising, you know that it's from what you're doing right now in this exact moment. And that's how you can refine exactly what's causing it, so that then you can uproot that craving, desire, attachment and fix it permanently, so it no longer invades the mind. Monks, anyone who has developed and cultivated mindfulness of the body has included within himself whatever wholesome states there are that lead to true wisdom, right? So when you're developing this awareness of the body, this awareness of these sensations, then you're able to cultivate these wholesome states. Because if the mind retains this unwholesomeness and this pollution, you're not going to be able to get to true wisdom or true knowledge or true insight, because the mind's polluted with craving, anger, and ignorance. But by eradicating all of this and cultivating awareness of these bodily sensations, it leads to true wisdom, which is what I'm sharing here, is that you understand exactly what led to this particular feeling or bodily sensation arise. Whereas if you have your mind split on 2 or 3 different things, you never get to true wisdom. You never get to true insight of what's actually causing this unwholesome bodily sensations to arise, or these unwholesome feelings to arise. So you'll get to true wisdom by focusing with singleness of mind. And now the last paragraph that Bassam asked about. Just as anyone who has extended his mind over the great ocean has included within him whatever streams there are that flow into the ocean, so too anyone who has developed and cultivated mindfulness of the body has included within him whatever wholesome states there are that lead to true wisdom. Okay, this is perfect. So what he's explaining here is, for just like the great ocean has streams that flow into the great ocean, so these streams are what leads to the great ocean. What the Buddha is saying here is, developing and cultivating mindfulness of the body is what leads to these wholesome mental states in this true wisdom. That without mindfulness of the body, you would never be able to get to these wholesome mental states in this true wisdom. This is what I was saying, that if you never are able to get to the point where you're aware of the bodily sensations arising, and your mind isn't aware of that and able to cut them off there, you'll never get to enlightenment. You'll never get to the point where the mind is permeating with wholesome states and true wisdom, which is the eradication of ignorance. True wisdom is essentially enlightenment, because that's what eradicates ignorance. And by eradicating ignorance with wisdom, the mind is enlightened. So just like the streams lead to the great ocean, it is the cultivation and development of awareness of bodily sensations that lead to wholesome states in the mind and lead to enlightenment or true wisdom. That's that last paragraph.
Well, talking about mindfulness and concentration, the Buddha provide maybe in chapter 82 a simile about concentration. So you may kindly shed some light on it.
Sure. All right, so we've got a simile here about the bowl of oil. This is a really interesting story. So let me just read this one for you guys, okay? Here we go. This is a story or a simile or an analogy explaining how important mindfulness is. Monks, suppose that on hearing the most beautiful girl of the land, the most beautiful girl of the land, a great crowd of people would assemble. Now that most beautiful girl of the land would dance exquisitely and sing exquisitely. On hearing the most beautiful girl of the land is dancing, the most beautiful girl of the land is singing, an even larger crowd of people would assemble. Then a man would come along, aspiring to live, not aspiring to die, aspiring for peacefulness, uninterested in discontentedness. Someone would say to him, "Good man, you must carry around this bowl of oil to the brim, filled to the brim, between the crowd and the most beautiful girl of the land." Right? So he's got the most beautiful girl of the land on one side, and he's got the crowd on the other side. A man with a drawn sword will be following right behind you. And whenever you spill even a little bit of it, even a little bit of that oil gets spilled, right there he will cut off your head. Right? So imagine that you're carrying this bowl of oil filled all the way up to the top. This amazingly beautiful woman who's singing and dancing and doing all the things she's doing in this crowd who's all riled up, and you're walking through the middle of them, right? And if you drop any little drop of oil, your head gets chopped off, right? What do you think, monks? Would that man stop attending to that bowl of oil and out of negligence turn his attention outwards, meaning turn it to the girl or turn it to the crowd? No, venerable sir. I have made up this simile, monks, in order to convey a meaning. This here is the meaning. The bowl of oil filled to the brim. This is a designation for the mindfulness directed to the body, right? So you've got to have such utter awareness of those bodily sensations, just as if you were carrying this bowl of oil filled to the brim. And you're so attentive to it because you know the guy with a sword is going to cut off your head if you drop any of it. And you've got all this noise and all this stuff going on around you, as we do in daily life. You've got to have such utter awareness as if somebody's about to cut off your head, right? So that's what he's saying here. That bowl of oil filled to the brim, this is the designation for the mindfulness directed to the body. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. We will develop and cultivate mindfulness directed to the body. Make it our vehicle. Make it our basis. Stabilize it. Exercise ourselves in it and fully perfect it. Thus, monks, should you train yourselves. So here he's explaining how important having awareness of these bodily sensations is to your practice, as if somebody's going to cut off your head if you happen to drop it. So you have to develop this in meditation, and one of the ways that you can do this is while you're in meditation and you're focused on the breath, if you feel a little itch in the body, don't itch it. Just keep focusing on the breath. Know that the itch is there, but don't itch it. Right? And if you can go 10 seconds or 20 seconds, great. And then if you have to itch it, go ahead. But then the next time, try to go 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Notice how it arises, it exists, and then it ceases to exist or it disappears. Same thing not only with an itch, but say a bug or a fly or something like that comes around, the sound, or they're walking on your skin. The same thing. Notice that it's there, but don't break from the breath. Focus on the breath as if it's a post or a pillar, and that's your anchor, so that then you get such utter awareness that you're aware of the bodily sensation. But at that point in your practice in meditation, you're cutting that off. You're cutting off that bodily sensation and you're focusing on the breath. And this is how you develop the ability to be aware of the bodily sensations and then cut them off and cut them off and cut them off and just focus on the breath. So that then, if you train this in meditation, then in daily life, when you're going about and you feel some sharpness and some heat rising in the body, and you know the mind's about to get angry, you can cut it off. Or if somebody says something really pleasant and agreeable to you, and you start feeling this excitement or this pride or this arrogance arise, this arrogance with ego, right? When you start noticing the bodily sensation of that, you can cut it off and just focus on keeping the mind content and peaceful. So this simile that the Buddha is giving you is explaining how important this awareness of the bodily sensations are, but then you have to develop them. You have to develop the awareness of mind to be aware of the bodily sensations so that then you can cut them off.
Yeah, thanks to the teacher for your help. Now let's go back again to Manal.
Yes, so there aren't any questions on Zoom, but I thought that we can, if we can review one thing about the origin of form, Teacher David. I had a question to clarify. So if understanding the origin of form, would that begin to eliminate sensual desire? Would that, and in understanding the true origin of form, would it begin to eliminate that sensual desire as effective as you cutting off the bodily sensation when it arises?
The understanding of the origin of form is what helps you to develop wisdom and just know with wisdom what is the origin of form. But in terms of getting rid of the sensual desire, cutting off any arising bodily sensations and feelings, that's where you're going to be able to get rid of the sensual desire.
So getting rid of the sensation is sort of the groundwork, and understanding the origin of form is sort of the more intellectual idea behind how to eliminate it completely.
Right. Well, not how to eliminate it completely, but understanding the origin of form helps you to eradicate the self and realize non-self, because you recognize that this form is not you. That this physical form is not you. If you understand intellectually the origin of this form, then you know it's not you. So with that wisdom, you can then understand the universal truth of non-self better, which helps you to realize non-self, but not necessarily anything with sensual desire.
Okay.
Unless you're thinking about perhaps like the sensual desire of bodily contact, right? Like if we have the sensual desire of bodily contact, like sexual craving, for example, that craving starts in the mind, but it's the bodily contact that we experience it in the mind when we actually have sexual contact. So if you understand that this form, this physical form is not you, then you don't have as much craving perhaps to produce pleasant feelings through the physical form. I could say that, yeah.
Right, because that's the idea that I was that was coming to mind when I was reading the chapter 69. It says in the last paragraph, this bhikkhus is the passing way of form, basically the origin of form. Chapter kind of breaks down passing away of feeling, and when it mentions the passing away of form, that's what I was thinking, is that it helps to assist in understanding, the origin of form, basically, and to eliminate bodily craving, bodily sensations arising.
Okay, I can explain this for you. You're in chapter 69, right?
Yes.
And then this paragraph right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what he's talking about here is he's talking about not taking pleasure or excitement in the fact of your form, of your physical form, but also other forms as well. Because oftentimes through the eyes, we see physical forms that are pleasing or agreeable to us. I mean, we could think about something simple like a new car. If you see a new car, we get excited about that. But here, what he's really talking about is the physical form of our own body. Because if we hold on to this physical form and we take great pleasure in it, then it's going to lead to renewed existence. It's going to lead to continuing to crave or cling to this, which is going to then produce this sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, despair. So by letting go of this physical form in terms of not trying to seek excitement in it, that, oh, my hair looks good today, I feel so wonderful, oh, wow, it's a good hair day, right? Because then when it's a bad hair day, the physical form doesn't look the same, and now the mind's discontent. Oh, today's a bad hair day, right? So he's essentially helping to understand that don't take excitement in the physical form, that this physical form is impermanent, and as long as you cling and you hold on to this physical form, the mind's going to be discontent. It's going to experience continued birth. It's going to experience aging, sickness, and death. And it's going to experience this sorrow, this grief, pain, and displeasure.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Nick has a question on chapter 79.
Okay. 79. What's the question from Nick?
Yes. Can you explain the last paragraph in italics and parentheses at the bottom of chapter 79?
Okay.
Developing reflection on the repulsive.
Sure. So one of the ways to let go of the physical body and the physical form, in terms of not clinging to your own physical form, but also to let go of any sexual craving or sensual desire to other forms, like a partner, a sexual partner, is to develop the unattractiveness of the body, where the mind understands the unattractiveness of the body. One of the reasons why we have sexual cravings in the mind is because we don't see things as they truly are. We don't see the physical body as it truly is. The mind has this ignorance or this delusion or this confusion that it views the physical body as desirable. But through developing the unattractiveness of the body, that we see the saliva and the pus and the defecation and the urination and the smelliness and the sweat and, all of those things with the body, then over time, as you develop this unattractiveness of the body, you become less and less interested in holding on to your own body, and you just know that you need to maintain it in order to maintain its cleanliness. But you also have less and less interest in partaking in any sexual contact with another person, because you see the body for what it is, which is a bit dirty, right? It's pretty dirty. we have to do all these things to the body to make it somewhat clean, but at the end of the day, it's still quite dirty. And developing the unattractiveness in the body starts to train the mind to let go of that central desire, that sexual craving for sensual pleasure through sexual contact. So one of the ways to do that is to meditate on the unattractiveness of the body, which here they're talking about the 32-part body meditation, where you actually go through all 32 parts of the body. The Buddha categorized the body into 4 categories of earth, wind, fire, and water. And then within each one of those categories, there's different parts. So in the earth category, there's things like bones and teeth and tissue and, you know, the earthy substances, right? Like the fingernails, the hair, these are earth. Then you've got the wind, or the movement of the body, like the movement of fluids or bow or solid substances in the body, the movement of the wind in the body. Then you've got fire, which is like the temperature or the heat of the body. We often refer to digestion that way. And then you've got the water, which is like saliva or tears or pus or urine, things like this, blood. So by meditating using the 32-part body meditation, you actually meditate on each one of the 32 body parts individually to start developing the unattractiveness of the body, so that rather than seeing this beautiful being with their hair and their makeup and their clothes and their jewelry and their perfume or cologne and all the things that we do to the body to make it attractive, instead what you start seeing is you start seeing more clearly what is truly actually there, which is these 32 body parts individually, and you meditate on them individually. So that's what this is referring to. And as you develop this unattractiveness of the body, the mind gets further and further away from sensual desire. It distances itself from sensual desire, which is what's needed in order to get into the first jhana. You can still have sexual contact and be in the second stage of enlightenment, but in order to get into the first jhana, you have to start distancing yourself from sensual desires, all sensual desires, not just sexual contact. And the mind has to slowly kind of start peeling itself away from trying to experience pleasure through these senses. And one of the most profound sensual desires that we have is sexual cravings and contact for sex. So that's why oftentimes people work on developing the unattractiveness of the body with 32-part body meditation as a way to start peeling that away. And it takes time. It's a gradual process. So don't think that if anybody were to meditate like 1 or 2 sessions and all of a sudden you don't want sex anymore. That's not the way this works. Is depending on what your sexual drive is, it can take multiple years to thin that out and ultimately eliminate it. So oftentimes people will start working on this kind of early in their practice, or after they kind of get most of the Eightfold Path put together and they start looking to get into the jhanas, they start developing the unattractiveness of the body. This is one way. The other way that people will often do it is look at a dissected corpse, either a picture or an actual corpse, and meditate with your eyes open and looking at the dissected corpse rather than this beautiful being with hair and makeup and jewelry and cologne and perfume and all these other things. You look at a dead dissected corpse. And some people do it in real life because here in the temples, they bring the bodies to the temples and they put it out on some places they put it on a bunch of wood and they actually burn it. So you can actually sit there and watch the body burn, and you can smell it too, which helps to train the mind to let go of any kind of affection that it has towards the physical body, to develop this unattractiveness. So these are the 2 types of meditations, But then once you're doing this in meditation, when you look at a human being, you start to not look at them in the same way as you did in the past, as this beautiful being with hair and makeup and jewelry and everything else. You start seeing the pus in the urine and the defecation and the smell, if you've been around a corpse, and the smell, or the sinews and the fluids and the dissected corpse, and you start seeing that instead of this roundness of the hips or the roundness of the breast or the butt or other parts of bodies that you might find attractive. Now, as you train this way, you start to let that go more and more, and the mind can develop this unattractiveness of the body and then ultimately eliminate the central desire of sexual contact or sexual craving.
Perhaps this is a good time to review chapter 85, which was mention of the various kinds of meditation, since you mentioned a few things. I was wondering if we can just go over this chapter and you can identify which meditation which you've taught is the specific one which has been mentioned in the book with the wording that's been used.
Sure. So here the Buddha says, the way we titled this one is Benefits of Developing Various Kinds of Meditation. Here he's talking to his son, Rahula, and he's explaining to his son the types of meditations to use and what they address. What is the this particular meditation remedying? Because there's the problems in the unenlightened mind, and then there's the remedy. So here, the first one is Rahula. Develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. So ill will, hatred, anger, all that disgruntledness, the frustration, the irritation, the pushing people away, the hostility, the resentment, this is eradicated through loving kindness meditation, which is part of what I teach in terms of getting to enlightenment. Then this next one, Rahula, develop meditation on compassion. For when you develop meditation on compassion, any cruelty will be abandoned. I've never actually seen, other than here, that the Buddha talked about specifically developing meditation on compassion, because that's kind of included in the loving kindness, and that helps the mind to no longer have hostility and aggression, right? Because you're eradicating this cruelty. The third one here is Rahula, develop meditation on sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is being pleased with others' success and having joy when you see other people being successful, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the antidote for jealousy. So sympathetic joy is the exact opposite of jealousy. So develop meditation on sympathetic joy, for when you develop meditation on sympathetic joy, any jealousy will be abandoned. So there's not any meditation that I know of specifically that does this, but you can arise this in daily life, that wherever you see jealousy or envy arising in the mind, then you cut it off and let it go, and you just take joy in seeing that other people are successful, rather than wishing that was you, or they didn't really deserve it, it should have been me. Instead of feeling that way, whenever you see jealousy or envy arise, you just cut it off and let it go, and arise sympathetic joy. Rahula, develop meditation on equanimity. For when you develop meditation on equanimity, any aversion will be abandoned. So equanimity is evenness of temper or calmness of mind, especially in difficult situations. That's one component of equanimity, that calmness of mind, stability of mind. And then the other part of equanimity is treating all beings fairly and equally. So here, you're doing that through breathing mindfulness meditation, is training the mind to be calm. You're also doing that to a certain degree in loving kindness meditation. But what he's saying here is any aversion, like pushing things away, right? Because what aversion is that when you experience painful feelings in the unenlightened state, the mind's going to want to push those painful feelings away, erecting a wall, between you and whatever you're attributing the painful feelings to. So if anger arises and you're attributing that to your children or to your wife or your husband or your life partner or your teacher or somebody else, you're going to have a tendency to want to push this person out of your life because you're attributing your anger, your frustration to that person. That's what aversion is. But when you practice equanimity, that even in a difficult situation, you can train the mind to be calm, then you no longer attribute this difficult situation that you're encountering to these external things. So you no longer are going to be interested in pushing someone away because you know any difficulty or any struggle that you're experiencing in any given situation is all because of your own doing. That if you're feeling pressure or you're feeling stress or you're feeling anxiety, it's not coming from the person, it's not coming from the situation, it's coming from your own mind's craving, desire, attachment. So when you understand that with true wisdom, and you can arise this evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations, then you'll no longer be interested in pushing difficult situations away or difficult people that you perceive as being difficult people away. Instead, you'll just figure out how to skillfully work through that situation and overcome it through remaining calm and peaceful, practicing this equanimity. Rahula, develop mindfulness on unattractiveness of the body, for when you develop meditation on unattractiveness of the body, any lust will be abandoned. This is what we were just talking about. I teach in the book Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. I teach a meditation on training the mind to develop unattractiveness of the body, to abandon lust or this sexual craving, right? So you can use that one, or you can use the 32-part body meditation, which I used to do when I was in America. And I found some benefit in that, and some people find benefit in that, but I didn't put it in the book, Developing a Life Practice. But if there's ever a time where somebody might need that, that's one of the meditations that the Buddha taught that I would offer to a student. And by this time, somebody working on eliminating sexual cravings, they're going to be in the second stage of enlightenment, perhaps, or maybe in the jhanas, or moving closer into those. So they're going to be working closely with the teacher. So that's why I didn't feel the need to put the 32-part body meditation in the book, because they should be working closely with the teacher at that point, and the teacher can help them to learn that meditation. And then the last one, Rahula, develop meditation on the perception of impermanence. For when you develop meditation on the perception of impermanence, the conceit I am will be abandoned. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is developing meditation on the perception of impermanence, because as the mind goes to the past, you recognize that thought is impermanent, and you cut it off and bring it back to the breath. Or if you have any thoughts or ideas or perceptions that arise, you recognize them as impermanent and you cut them off and bring it back to the breath. Or if the mind goes to the future, you recognize that as impermanent and you cut it off and bring it back to the breath. Or if while you're in meditation, there's a bodily sensation that arises, you recognize that it's impermanent. You don't feel a need to itch it and scratch it right now, because you know it's going to dissolve and it's going to disappear on its own, because it's impermanent. It's not going to be permanent. So you don't need to actually scratch it. You can actually train the mind to just reside unaffected. And as that itch arises, it eventually will cease to exist. And this eradicates the conceit I am, because I am is like I am wonderful, I am perfect, I am so great, or I am a nurse, I am a doctor, I am a teacher. This is the arrogance or the pride that the mind wants to have, that we refer to as part of the ego. And by developing this impermanence in the mind and soaking it into the mind really deeply, that the universal truth of impermanence is in fact truth and wisdom, then you can realize that you are actually none of these things. That I am not this body, I am not the thoughts, I am not the feelings, I am not a teacher. I choose to teach because people are interested to learn, but I am not this person. There's just this physical body and this mind that has come together for this existence. And there's been a certain accumulation of wisdom of what people can learn from this mind. But I am not this body. I am not this mind. And that will help you to, by understanding impermanence, that this body is not permanent, this mind is not permanent, then you can start to eradicate this arrogance or this pride that I am so great, I am a teacher, I am a hard worker. And when you do that, then the mind can reside more peaceful, because when somebody's like, you're not a teacher, okay, whatever. I know I'm not a teacher. I don't exist. Or you're not a hard worker, you're so lazy. Okay, well, that's their opinion, and you don't take it offensively when they're talking about you, because there is no you, right? You just see it as a lack of their wisdom, their moral conduct, their mental discipline, and you don't take it personal, because there is no I here. As long as there's this conceit of I am, then the mind's going to want to defend itself. So when someone says, you're so lazy, or you're not a hard worker, or you're ugly, or you're not a teacher, or you're not a good worker, or you're not a good employee, the mind's going to be discontent, because it's taking ownership over these qualities, and with arrogance and pride, it's holding on to them. But when you recognize that you are none of these things, then you can eradicate this conceit, this arrogance, this pride, and the mind can reside more peaceful, because you're no longer defending the self. You're no longer projecting this arrogance and pride and trying to defend it. When you hear something agreeable, the mind no longer becomes excited. It just hears that someone's complimenting you. Okay. And then when somebody speaks something disagreeable, then you no longer become sad or angered, because it's just somebody speaking something disagreeable, and it's just not something that affects your mind. So your mind remains in the middle, that when you hear something agreeable or you hear something disagreeable, either way, the mind just can reside peaceful, calm, serenity, content, with joy in the middle, because it's not experiencing pleasant feelings based on agreeable things. It's not experiencing painful feelings based on disagreeable things. It just is unaffected by either words, because you've eradicated this arrogance or this pride, this conceit of I am.
The meditation on equanimity, so would you categorize that more of just a thinking exercise, or an exercise, a contemplating exercise, or would you categorize it as an actual meditation practice? Because this essentially wouldn't fall under breathing mindfulness meditation. So how would you categorize the equanimity exercise?
I think that these three give the impression that there's a specific meditation for these things, but in reality, you're accomplishing these things through the established meditations that the Buddha taught. Based on what I have access to and based on what I've experienced and practiced, there aren't specific meditations for compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. But instead, you're accomplishing this through other meditation practices. There's two primary meditations that he taught, which is breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. And then there's the training for unattractiveness of the body. And then there's the other meditation that I teach, which is the elimination of the self, which helps with this last one, the perception of impermanence as well. But the two primary are breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness. The equanimity, or this evenness of temper, this comes from your breathing mindfulness meditation primarily, but you also get a little bit of that from the loving kindness meditation. But you've got to move this into practice in daily life. You can't just do it in meditation only. So when you're in a situation that you're starting to feel pressured or difficult, or challenged in any particular situation, the mind's got to click in and remember equanimity, evenness of temper, calmness. By keeping your mind calm, the mind's going to perform better, and you're going to be able to access awareness of mind and wisdom and concentration more directly to be able to address whatever difficult situation you're in. So that equanimity gets developed through all the other meditations, but then you've got to practice it in daily life whenever you're facing or encountering a challenging situation.
Okay, Nick has a question, Teacher David. May we or should we read this chapter as Rahula, we develop meditation for, instead of Rahula, develop meditation on?
Yeah, you could read it that way if you like. Yeah, that would work, Nick.
Okay, there aren't any other questions.
Okay, so I'll just stop sharing my screen here for you guys and bring our live stream back to full screen. So next week, we're going to be in this same book, but we're going to be doing chapters 91 through 124. So basically from chapter 91 to the end of the book. And you can download the book from that site that I mentioned, which is buddhadailywisdom.com/free Buddha books. And you can download it there and read through those chapters, and we'll do the same thing next week where we'll accept any questions on any of those chapters. And then as we go forward here, I'll explain to you more about how we're transitioning over to these new books. Anybody who's in Zoom, if you guys would like to stick around, and I will share with you how we're transitioning over to the new books, because I started talking to the moderators just before the live stream and we got kind of cut off because it was time to start live streaming. So if those of you guys who would like to learn about how we're transitioning and what we're doing with these new books, I'll explain it to you now. But as a class for the live stream, I'll explain it in July. But I'm going to go ahead and turn on the ending of the live stream and say goodbye to everybody, and then I'll be back in about 3 minutes into Zoom so that I can explain it to anybody who's interested to learn about that. So I'll see you guys either next Saturday for this class, chapters 91 through 124, or tomorrow we're going to be studying chapter 11 in the book Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, and then Wednesday we're doing loving kindness meditation. So until then, have a lovely rest of your day. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.